This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by C2E2, the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo. This week on iFanboy, everything changes.
Someone will die.
I hope it's you.
Could be.
Who will it be?
It's probably Spider-Man. Hey, welcome to iFanboy, the weekly comic book discussion show. I'm Josh Flanagan.
I'm Conor Kilpatrick.
And I'm Ron Richards. And if there's one word that if you're an ardent comic fan over the past 5 years or so,
ardent,
there's one word that you probably hate hearing.
Or love.
Very few of you.
Well,
and
if you're a publisher, you love hearing it.
You know, there's a thin line between love and hate.
And that word is events. Events mania seems to have taken off in the comic book industry over the past 10 years. And we thought we'd make an event out of it.
Woo! So we're going to kill one of us.
We're going to kill Josh off. We're going to have a variant cover. It's going to be amazing. No, but seriously, we want to talk about, what, like, we always throw around the terms like, oh, I'm sick of these events. There are all these events.
Events.
What is an event? What makes up an event? Are there any, are they really the worst thing in the world? Are there actually some good ones that we actually enjoyed?
And then finally, what is each of our favorite all-time events?
Exactly.
But that's the end of the show.
Yeah, so you have to stay tuned for that. But, so to start off, what is an event? We were talking about it in the iFanboy headquarters before we recorded.
Shockingly, could not agree on what an event was.
Again, a theme, which I thought was fairly obvious what an event was. To me, comic books have always been made up of events. That they are, especially superhero comics,
That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically what you have is you have a rising action, hitting a climax crescendo, and then ramifications. And this goes back to the early Silver Age in the 60s. In my mind, the first event was the Coming of Galactus in Fantastic Four, where that was an event. It was like, oh shit, look at what's happening in this book.
The component to it, though, being that this is actually going to be there's the churn of superhero stories, and there's a villain this month and whatever. But this is gonna matter. This is gonna change things.
Similar to the TV season, where like the episodes in October are the kind of build up, and then they hit sweeps in November, and that's when the crazy shit happens, and then it goes away until
That to me, the Galactus is just a big story. An event would be if Galactus showed up across a bunch of books, and then they dealt with it.
But they get it now. That's what would happen.
Yeah. But that's, to me, when you're talking about an event now, you're talking about a crossover.
Okay, well that has what it's become.
Right.
So how I define it was an event in a big happening in a book, but as these different characters grew into families of books, you have the X-Men line of books, you have the Batman line of books, the Superman line of books. So you've got this big happening across multiple titles and becoming a crossover, which was something that became a big fad in the 80s. The event as crossover.
See, I see an event. I see event, and I see sub-event. I see event goes across the line.
You think they use those? You think Dan Buckley's like, we're going to do a sub-event this week?
Well, no, but for me as a reader, what I see is I see an event that goes across the line. You have your Civil War.
Which is across the entire publishing line.
Yeah, you have your Crisis on Infinite Earths. You have your Infinite Crisis. You have that kind of thing. You have your Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
Then you have sub-event, which is confined to a family of books like, X-Men events. X-Men have events. Avengers events. Batman events. But those are just in a book. And I actually tend to call those crossovers. Yeah. And then there's an event and there's a crossover. That's how I define an event.
See, I would say that a crossover is an event.
Yes.
But an event is not necessarily
a crossover.
Which one's the rhombus?
Square. Okay. Because it's just how big you want to make it. It's just how far you want that.
It comes out of marketing term.
That's the thing. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
it's a marketing term.
Basically, it's taking the premise of what they built in the '60s, which was a big happening, and figuring out a way to market it. And guess what? Sell more books.
Yeah.
So it started off with oh my god, this amazing event is happening in this book. You've got to read it. To oh my god, this major event's happening. You're going to buy that book. We know you will, but we're also going to make you buy these 3 books in order to read it. Well, and it's a way to pump sales.
So Jeff Johns comes in. He goes, I got an idea for a Green Lantern story. I'm going to make it a really big deal. We're going to find out there's other colored lanterns out there, and they go, all right, well, how do we sell more books like this? Well, we make this story event bleed into some of the other books, and we make these stories. I bet 30 years ago, that would have just been a Green Lantern story. It would have been a big Green Lantern story. You might still remember it today, but it wouldn't necessarily have
possibly
spawned other stuff.
30 years ago, yes. 20 years ago, no. It would have been a company-wide event.
And
what happening since the 80s.
What's really interesting is to see how how the treatment of events have carried through. Like, so for example, he held up Secret Wars, which is one of our personal favorite events.
Seminal Marvel Comics event.
Which was a year-long 12-issue, well, more than 12-issue series. 12 issues initially.
It was 12 issues of the actual book, but it had crossovers.
So it took over for a year, and it took all of the heroes out of their world and put them on a planet where they're going to fight each other. So, but the thing is, you would think that for that year, like if this is done now, all these characters would be out of their made books for that year. Except that those books just kept on going.
Yeah. Well, that's what
which I find hysterical. So this happened on its own little island for a year, but the books kept on rolling. And
well, in a way, it's actually like Avengers Prime. It's actually what that is. It's exactly what that is.
Exactly.
It's a little pocket story.
Now, conversely, at the similar time, not the same time, but similar time, DC does their line-defining reboot event, Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Before that.
Now that's your event. I mean, that's
that's a reboot, kind of thing. But what's interesting is that when you said make it bleed across the other books, some books literally all there was they looked up and the sky had turned red.
Right.
And that was the crossover. That was the whole that
got a banner on it.
Yeah, exactly. Which just cracks me up.
But those are the Secret Wars 2 especially. You're talking about banners on every book.
Yeah.
We did a something on it. I can't remember so many shows. Something on Secret Wars 2 a while back. Yeah. Oh, it was a mini. And when I went through every book that had a banner on it, there was just so many of them. There was like 80 books that had banners on them, and that's part of the event.
Somebody
process.
went, wait a minute, did you see the sales?
And that goes back to the 80s, is that they found out if they make this event, if they slap a banner on books, Joe Q comic buyer will buy a book he's never bought before because the banner's on.
Because he has OCD.
Then he'll become editor-in-chief one day.
Yes.
He dropped comic buyer because it wasn't his mother's.
But yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like I know I fell for it. I fell for it many years where it's like there's this great huge story and I've got to buy all the books in order. There's a reading list and when you're a collector and when you're a kid and that sort of thing, it gets kind of like fun because it's like, oh cool, I want to see what the story is. Yes. But now as we're in our 30s, 40s, we're adults. We're looking at how we spend our money, and it's like what's happened now is, 20, 30 years later, it's turned on us where we're like, oh, don't make me buy all these books.
And before on his point, the banner thing. When I was in junior high school, the Armageddon 2001 was a 1991 event.
Yes,
DC used to do an event every year in the annuals in the summertime.
Yep.
That was what they did.
And
Marvel did as well. Yeah.
That was and Marvel did too. That's when you had your event, and this doesn't happen anymore. Is every year you and that was actually kind of exciting as a comic reader as a kid. You knew that when the summertime hit, you were out of school. It was time for a big comic event.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing. I bought everything that had the banner on it because at the time it was like it's a different time than it is now. But I wanted to see how the story affected characters I didn't read about.
Yeah.
I remember
of course, you
using
learn from that. You don't need to buy it.
I remember when I was younger, when I was like 11, 12, it was the late 80s. I remember that actually was a way that I would discover new titles. It actually did work.
Yeah.
And now
that's the reason why
it's funny. Now as an adult, I'm like resentful of it, but also because I know what everything is for the most part. And,
I know everything.
Well, no, but like I know who all the characters are. I know this, but when you're sort of discovering everything, you're like, well, I will read this issue of whatever. But I remember the first ones that I ever saw was Inferno.
Inferno.
That was actually in the main titles. And then there was Atlantis Attacks, which went across into the
annuals.
Only the annuals, though. They weren't in the other.
I think that might have been the annuals.
And I remember I bought a bunch of
Acts of Vengeance was one that was in the issues, and that had the little triangle on the corner.
That was probably the first one that I was really into that I bought.
You know what the premise of Acts of Vengeance was?
I don't.
We're going to take. I'm probably wrong about this, and we're going to do an asterisk to prove me wrong or something like that. But I think I'm right. I'm pretty sure the idea around Acts of Vengeance is okay. Iron Man's villain is the Mandarin, so Mandarin's going to fight Thor.
Yeah,
and Loki's going to fight. It was like swapping villains, which is just has the simplicity of it.
It's nice.
I hope I'm right.
And then later, like I remember that over in Amazing Spider-Man, there was the Captain Universe one.
Yeah.
Like you get the powers.
Yeah, where he became like omnipotent.
Well, see, the thing is, in the '80s, they all had this wacky kind of innocence to them, and it was the '90s where it was the late '90s where that's where event, like we coined event fatigue in the past 3 years, but I think the first event fatigue happened in the late '90s when you had the Clone Saga, you had the Rise of the Supermen, and all that sort of stuff. You had Onslaught with the X-Men. You had all these like events that were just really tiresome. We were talking
Live, Kree, or Die.
Live, Kree, or Die, or like Operation Galactic Storm, which to this day, like I have, in my collection, I've got a random 2 issues of Quasar that are only from Operation Galactic Storm.
I remember Live, Kree, or Die. I had to buy an issue of Quicksilver, and I'm like, there's a Quicksilver series. First of all,
I have all those issues,
and you have all of them. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Well,
I remember being resentful. I don't want to buy this.
What political climate was Operation Galactic Storm okay?
What was the...
during a war.
It was after Desert Storm.
It was during Desert Storm.
Yeah, and it was
Operation
Operation Galactic Storm, and they had to go off to the Kree or the Skrulls.
But the thing was, the reason why that period was so intensely anti-event was because the whole bubble burst.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason for the bubble was those events.
No. Those events happened after the bubble burst.
I think those are trying to pull you back.
Exactly, that's what it was.
The Clone Saga, Superman was during the bubble.
Oh, no, you know the event that burst the bubble? Deathmate. No, that it's documented. No, Deathmate, the crossover between Valiant and Image, Deathmate Black was the issue that was so late and so millions of people advance ordered it and it never came out, and so many retailers got hurt by it. And then when Deathmate Yellow and Red finally came out and nobody bought them, that was what that Deathmate is the sign of the bubble bursting in the mid-90s.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's true.
I learned something today.
There you go.
Okay, so
I'm so proud of myself. Active Vengeance and Deathmate.
We kind of have an idea of what an event is. It's basically a marketing term. Now that the cycle of events now in the Marvel DC world is you lead to this big story involving everybody, and then you go to then that fallout of that leads to the next big story. And that happened for 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009.
Yep.
Enough people started complaining about it that Marvel went all event free in 2010.
Well,
And sales plummeted.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is also that Marvel, I think, has been the most proactive in trying to invent the language around that we use, where they're like, where it's an event, it's been leading up, this is great, and then when people start getting anti-events, it was, no, this is a status quo change.
Well, and they started
like,
that thing of, we'll do the event, we got 7 issues in Civil War, but then the other status quo is that the other stuff's happening. They did the same thing with Secret Invasion. Like, the Secret Invasion miniseries happened, but then Secret Invasion, the banner, it's all about that banner.
It's all about the banner. I mean, honestly,
really
it's like...
It used to be just a little corner of the
No,
cover.
now it's cover treatment and all stuff. It's like and honestly, for some comic readers, and I fall for it sometimes too. It's like with DVDs, you put it in that special box, and I'm all like, ooh, you give me a logo and a special thing. I'm like,
really learning to throw away that cardboard sleeve.
I
don't need that.
Yeah, I get rid of it. Yeah.
No, but you're right. When they went event free, sales went.
Well, it's funny because the Heroic Age was a status quo and a banner with no event.
Exactly.
And sales tanked. And it's kind of unfortunate because I remember that whole time going from Civil War to Secret Invasion to Dark Reign to whatever, to Siege. Siege was
actually good.
Siege was good.
Siege was
It was a good ending. And I remember I just want these guys to write their own books. I just want Captain America to run around and do it. And
no, people stop buying them.
Yeah. Because
I think they've trained the readership now. As much as people complain, I think Marvel and DC did a great job of training readership to want to buy only the books that matter. What matters? The events.
Yep.
Everything has to be connected. What happened to DC? The top selling books were Green Lantern Corps. Never before. Why? Because they were the ones that mattered because they were part of the event.
Right.
And the readership has been trained like dogs
Pavlovian
to respond only to the books that matter, and that's what the events are. And that's why Fear Itself is coming out this year, and that's why there's be a DC event. Flashpoint is like a mini event.
But it feels so short-sighted.
It is short-sighted, but that's the marketplace now.
Now the thing is that we're being very anti and kind of thing. But the thing is, I think in some of these events there are some grains of goodness. There are honestly, we talk about a lot of our audio podcasts, but this past year, Top Cow, a smaller publisher, launched Artifacts, which is like their line-wide event, which has been awesome.
Yeah. I think an event has a lot of promises inherent to it.
Yeah.
It's saying this is going to be the best thing that you read this year.
This is going to change
everything. And you hear that enough.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't deliver enough, even if it's pretty good. Like you're just like,
no, but that's the thing is that like, okay, so I'm a diehard X-Men reader, and in the past year there have been 2 events. That was Second Coming, which was dealing with the Hope returning and all that stuff, and the Curse of the Mutants, which was the X-Men versus Vampires. Both those events completely delivered for me.
I would never call Curse of the Vampires an event. It was just in one. It was basically in one book.
Right, but that was
to me a story.
Right.
They had a press conference.
It was.
I wouldn't. But that's But the thing with the event is, on the one hand, you've got that with the broken promises conflict. On the other hand, when an event does work, it's almost impossible to beat that.
Yeah.
Because you've got these grand epic stories. You've got a huge cast of characters with all your favorites.
Right.
And so when they do pull it off, like in a Siege or a Blackest Night or some of these other ones we're going to talk about in a second, it's almost, as a comic book reader who's reading these characters, it's almost impossible to top that because it's so much fun.
And now it's dangerous because it's playing with fire, because when you do a line-wide event or when you do when you've got a bigger kind of thing, you need to hit it and it needs to come out and like we saw, this problem with Civil War was that the 2 issues that got delayed drove everyone nuts, not only because the story was delayed, but because it affected so many other stories in the line that other things got delayed. Image United.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a huge deal about that.
That still comes out?
Yeah. Your guess is good
I'm
about-
so disappointed that it followed exactly what everyone said was going to happen.
Exactly.
It's so disappointing. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to... Listen, Image United is going to come out, and it just... It was like a script.
You can read it. I mean, it's just all sitting on Tom McFarlane's desk. I mean, it's just there. You can...
Remember how mad they got at us when we made that joke when they first announced it?
Yeah.
Ha 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 ha!
But I still love Image. But anyway, but
You'll buy every one of them.
Oh, totally. With that weird printing stock on the cover. But anyway, but you play with fire because then you run the risk of pissing off the fans,
Yes.
and then it sucks because not only do you have to buy these books, but they're delayed and.
But if everything has to be up to 10 and 11, you can't sustain that all the time.
Sure.
And the thing that builds these comic books, the thing that builds these worlds and these characters are the stuff in between.
Yep.
But the market hasn't supported that.
Yep.
And so I can't blame DC and Marvel for going back and saying, well, this is what we have to do.
I'm surprised it took this long, actually.
Yeah, they tried it. They did. They stuck with it, and it wasn't, maybe all the stories weren't
at the end
great.
of 2011, when you complain about event fatigue, you get nowhere to go.
You get yourself to blame.
Yeah, no one bought the books when they weren't.
It's okay.
Saying.
You look at the camera, Rick. You're like,
It's your fault.
it's your fault, Will.
Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo, also known as C2E2. March 18th through 20th. McCormick Place in downtown Chicago. Graphic novels, comics, games. C2E2, C2E2,
C2E2 is awesome.
C2E2.com. Movies. TV. Cosplay.
We are at C2E2 in Chicago.
Meet me there, please.
Okay, so let's talk about our favorite events of all time.
All time?
We got stacks of books here. There are other books we don't even have.
Yeah.
The event books would stack to the ceiling. What is your all-time favorite event?
My all-time favorite event, not surprisingly, is also my first event. You always remember your first. But it was an X-Men crossover event called Extinction Agenda, which was actually, like I said, my first event. It was within the first year of me buying X-Men. So I discovered the X-Men. I love it. It's fantastic. Literally, the second issue of Uncanny X-Men was the first chapter of Extinction Agenda, and all of a sudden that forced me to go buy X-Factor and New Mutants, which thank God, because then I got into those books. And what it did basically was it was Genosha.
So tell us the story of Extinction
Cameron
Agenda.
Hodge, who was the advisor of X-Factor, went.
This is going to be dense.
Went crazy, just became a head in this whole kind of cybernetic body type thing. Genosha was this country that was very anti-mutant, and they took mutants and turned them into slaves, and they called them mutates. And they would shave their head, tattoo a number on them, and basically and Storm and some other X-Men got captured, and so basically it's a rescue and deal with this evil kind of story. And it was fantastic.
And it went across all the X books.
Went across all the X books, and you had drama. You had Alex Summers, Havoc, Cyclops' brother, who lost his memory and was a magistrate in the Genoshan army. And so you've got like, oh, but he's one of us, and him and Cyclops fighting each other, and then you've got dramatic, like it seems like all the chips are down, but then all of a sudden Gambit comes out of nowhere, and it's just like, and this great rising action.
But you didn't actually have any history with those characters, so
it was awesome. No, because the drama was there, and
I feel a little like you've been chasing that high ever since.
I have.
like you were like, it's like the diminishing returns of a hard drug, and you can't shake it.
I could not wait for the next issue. Like I would every week. I'm like, is the next chapter out? Like, and it came out in order.
And they were like, no, they come out once a month, Ron.
And what I loved was it had part 1, part 2, part 3, and I had to go.
Little kid, 3 feet high with sideburns.
No, I was in 6th grade, whatever. But it was so much fun. I've gone back and read it time and time again. It still holds up to me, and it's like, although the art. Like, you had Jim Lee on X-Men, and then you had, and then Liefeld was on New Mutants, and then X-Factor was fill-ins, and it was just like, oh.
Always. X-Factor is always the stepsister.
Yeah. But.
Now, Josh, your all-time favorite event is one that I don't necessarily agree is an event, but I won't give it to you.
But you're wrong, because it's a logo.
Yeah, and it went across a bunch of books, and it was a thing. They said, we're going to change everything in Gotham City for No Man's Land. And they did.
So No Man's Land, the No Man's Land crossover.
And I remember one of the thing that made this sort of like, at first, and you hear about it, just like with anything, you just go, because what they did was, we're going to put it across these books, and now you're going to have to start buying the books that you weren't reading before. So I was reading Batman, I was reading Detective, and then they were going to make it go across Shadow of the Bat, which I think was around the time, and I think Legends of the Dark Knight, which wasn't even an in-continuity book, it was just like past tales. And so they turned that into a regular book, and then Batgirl, the Batgirl of the time, Cassandra was in it.
It was in Batman, Shadow of the Bat, Detective Comics, Legends of the Dark Knight, at least in this trade. So that was basically every Batman book.
And what's interesting is that this is an event after an event, because Cataclysm was an event as well.
Yeah, and that was a whole thing that went on. And I remember thinking, I don't want to buy all that stuff. But I started to, and I didn't regret it. It wasn't making me...
See, sometimes it works.
Because you know it's less about the name of the title on the cover of the book.
Yeah,
it's just the No Man's Land story runs across these other things.
But the thing that kept up.
Changed. Really, it was the same writers.
No, I don't think so. It was Rucka and Brubaker were on there.
I think Gale too. I think.
Yeah, Gail Simone.
No, Bob Gale. I think.
Bob Gale. You're right. Yeah. You're right. But it was just a great story, and it did change everything, and it affected stuff for a really long time.
Yeah, Bob Gale did
it just felt like it was this story that you were in. That they really got time. That's the
They really got frustrated.
That's what Batman looks like. It's not going to be Batman going. It's not going to do that.
Every book is just so stressful. It's just all grrr.
The X-Men books don't look like that?
No.
They're glowing purple and they have patches. But you read these.
Story,
I mean, it was a really strong story, and it was one of those ones where they went, here's the world now, and they just reveled in it.
Well, how do you really throw Batman off is you destroy Gotham City.
Yeah.
And you have him deal with a world that's completely foreign.
Yeah.
They had an earthquake, it cuts off the world, and this is not the earthquake, this is the aftermath of the earthquake.
Yeah. Which is nice, because a lot of times in comics, the thing will happen. There'll be a huge alien invasion, they'll destroy a city, and then damage control, I fixed it.
They'll play a baseball game.
There'll be a huge tidal wave sweeping through New York.
Yeah, exactly.
And then next month it'll have been gone. Extinction Agenda, is that collected?
Yeah, yes it is.
So these 5 No Man's Land trade actually, this is all that there is. Mm-hmm. They actually cut out about half the issues.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the trades don't... You can get the whole story here, but you don't get all of the issues.
Right.
You have to actually get the issues.
Extinction Agenda was just...
and it was like...
9 issues.
But it was like what they did with Amazing Spider-Man. It was... Part 1 was 1 week, Part 2 was the next week, in the
because it's every
title.
book they could do that. Literally for a year, it was every week.
Which I resent being made to buy more books that I don't want to. I don't necessarily want a weekly book, and the only way that works is if it's real good, and it was real good. So that's why that's the one that I remember. Well, they did it right,
Yours?
My all-time favorite one is actually, again, like you, is the first crossover I ever read as a kid, and it's the granddaddy of them all. It's Crisis on Infinite Earths.
But so now, was that just the miniseries Crisis, or did you read the satellite books?
I just read the miniseries.
Okay, so that's not really
Were
an
there
event,
satellite
that's not
books?
a crossover. Yeah, every book in the Red Sky.
Yeah. No, but as a kid, I only read the miniseries.
So you just read the miniseries. You didn't
the
read
events,
whole
like
crossover.
we just Civil War.
Yeah, that's probably not an event then.
Oh, this is the most important event of all time.
I'm just fucking with you.
For me,
it's more of a reboot.
I'm more after the reboot comes after the event.
It's a mini boot.
The reason why I have
pre-boot.
A pre-boot?
Yeah, we just made that up.
I'm going to put that in there.
Carmen Infantino told me that.
Okay.
There's a pre-boot.
It's
in the notes in here.
I remember Coletta came in one day. She was like,
we got to pre-boot this.
That was the term for it?
You're the pre-boot stamp.
I look at every event through the lens of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Mm-hmm. To me, this is the granddaddy. It truly was. Everything truly did change after this.
Mm-hmm. It's a reboot.
This lived up to the event. And Crisis on Infinite Earths wiped away the DC universe and restarted it from scratch.
Because of Infinite Crisis, it was a pre-boot. You didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If this happened, this would never happen today.
Yeah. Could you imagine if they did that?
Half the fandom would commit some sort of hardcore suicide.
Yeah. I would love
that would be awesome.
Love to see that.
That would be awesome.
They said the continuity is too complex, we have to start over. Wipe the slate clean.
They totally learned their lesson, too.
Yeah.
They only need to do it 5 or 6 more times.
Somewhere Hawkman's like...
I just love that there was a little button in DC, like with the thing, and they just like, hit it, It's just like...
The lights start flashing.
They're in the situation room.
It's the pre-boot button. They're going to go to the pre-boot room.
So for me,
I know that Brevoort is actually a Dutch translation of the word pre-boot? I don't know if you knew that.
We've lost the thread of this one. For me, I have a harsh view of events because every event has to live up to Crisis. It has to change things, it has to be important, it has to go across every book, it has to involve every character.
Do you think characters need to die?
Well, that tends to be the way you make the story dramatic. You don't have to.
That's the thing, is that so many events have someone will die, and it's always like, Goliath? I don't even know who Goliath is. I've never thought about it.
Yeah. But, I mean, here you lost Supergirl.
And Flash.
That was big ones.
Oh, you lost a lot more than that, but 2 big ones.
Yeah.
They're both back.
Yeah.
It also took almost 30 years to bring back Flash. That was a big deal. But for me, this is the best one.
Was the death of Captain America an event?
No, it's just a story.
But that was
the event.
The thing about...
It happened during Civil War, which was the event.
Yeah, but the Captain America thing happened within that book. It didn't cross over into anything else. Right. I mean, they kind of were making it into one.
Right.
It was a media event.
That's true. So you
Hey
probably
guys, guess who died today? What?
I'm never. Damn it, Will. The guy I worked with, it was like, Captain America died. I was like, what? It's fucking 9 a.m. What? Oh.
It's Wednesday. We haven't been in the.
Oh.
You haven't gone to the shop yet? Bagel time! I ruined my comics at bagel time!
I didn't even read comics. That was the worst part.
It was the worst part.
Yahoo.
It was a civilian.
No.
With CNN.
Anyway, so you've probably got tons of opinions on events. I know it's a hot topic. We're looking forward to all your comments and
Tell us-
why we're wrong.
Come
why
tell us what
comments
your
are wrong.
favorite event is.
Yeah. Go to ifanboy.com. That's where the post of this whole episode will be, and you can leave your comments there.
Email is at contact@ifanboy.com, and the voicemail line is 888-FANBOYS 326-2697. Call us.
If you call me? If you go to twitter.com/ifanboy, you can you can see all the stuff that we have coming out in a given day. You
It's
go to
becoming how fast can we say this?
I
Go to
fan-
twitter.com/ifanboy.
it's only like for the new people.
Send us a tweeter.
Listen, this is very seriously. iFanboy's membership supported. You are the people who make this happen. So if you want to take part and take charge of your little piece of iFanboy, you can become a member, which is to go to ifanboy.com/store and contribute directly to the show. And for that, we will be eternally grateful. We will make every show an event.
Josh
Yes.
will hug you.
Yes.
I will.
Josh's pledge in 2011 is to
And-
hug every member.
No, but part of this great event of this episode is we've set up a 1-900 number where you can call and vote as to whether or not Josh will die in the next episode. So
Was the Death in the Family an event?
No.
that was an event.
Totally an event.
That was such an event.
It's an event culturally. It was not an event comic-wise. It was just
That's
one.
where's the,
They had
show me
one
where that's
line
written
written
down.
It wasn't even across one. It was in one book. It
They-
wasn't even
Show me where that isn't like
They had a
the
one
editor's somewhere
number.
going. That's not an event.
They had a 1-900
not an event,
number.
not an event.
They had a 1-900 number.
They did, but
It was
wasn't
an
even
event.
though. It was a cultural event.
Event.
Too bad. I gotta die now. You lose.
Sorry.
Anyway, iFanboy members make this happen.
We've long past
Very
that.
long
I
past
know,
that.
but it's important.
Say goodnight.
No,
Say
I'm,
good- no, say
I'm
good-
not Gracie.
Say goodbye.
Say goodbye. Dun, dun, dun. Three, two,
Hello, welcome to iFanboy. I just went with it.
three,
That's good.
3, 2.
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Do it. I'll do it.
You do it.
You, me, you, me, you, me, you, me.
What? You with it?
You. What is that? Oh, it's
Saturday Night Live is
Oh, Jesus.
Chris Kattan, Will Ferrell.
They made a movie of that.
Not a, oh my
Will
God.
Ferrell's first movie.
MacGruber
Was
was
bad.
awful.
Yeah, that's fine.
Duh!
Awful.
Wow. I find the sketches fun.
No, the sketches are great. The movie was awful.
I hated it at the time, but now I find that really good.
Yeah, 13 years later.
Did they say anything in there? No, they just dance.
It was funny.
The sketch was kind of funny. I didn't see it. I've never seen it.
They were
No,
florists.
not the movie. I've never seen the movie.
The movie,
sketch
they were
was funny.
florists.
I've never heard you say it. I've never seen it.
I've seen that.
I've seen all the movies. 3?
Chris Kattan.
Are you counting?
3.